on and continue the message that I have from Oshun and Yemaya, as well as discuss something that the goddesses have inspired me to do. So the first thing is I'm going to be pushing back the start of the apprenticeship because of what the goddesses have inspired me to do. I'm going to spend the rest of this year, the last basically 3 months that we have in this year. We're a little bit shy of 3 months because we've already started in September, but we're going to start where we are. So we got about 2.5 weeks roughly left, and I mean not 2.5 weeks, 2.5 months roughly left in this year. And so what the goddesses have inspired me to do is to hold a couple workshops. I'm going to start with doing a workshop online, and I'm also planning to do some things at a metaphysical shop that's here in Michigan. So my intention is I'm going to discuss it. I have already kind of lightly discussed it with the shop owner when I was there, when I did the event, the psychic fair. And she allows people to basically, rent out her space. She has a pretty nice big space in the back to do classes and different things. So I've had a couple people ask me when was I going to start doing classes locally again, and it's always been my intention, but I do things again based on spirit, and so I'm feeling like it's time for me to start, and I want to start with some things that the goddesses are inspiring me to do. So one of the things that I will be doing, I'm going to start this, not this coming Saturday, but Saturday the 20th, I will start a Restoring the Divine Feminine workshop. I picked Saturday specifically because I feel that's a good day. A lot of people, most people have Saturdays off work. Not everybody, but most people are off on Saturdays. And I'm going to do a Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, should I say, at 8 p.m. And basically the workshop is going to consist of every Saturday from the 20th, and then the 2 following Saturdays, all of them starting at 8 p.m. I will be doing a live lecture using via Zoom, so you'll receive a Zoom link. As well as at the end of the lecture, there'll be opportunity to ask questions. And then I'm going to do a live healing, live Reiki healing. So what I'm going to do is, because a lot of people need help with activating. Okay. Remember, I was talking about it yesterday, specifically activating our womb codes. The thing about the sacral chakra is everyone, man or women, you hold your emotional energy in the sacral. Each of the chakras are influenced by different deities and influenced by different planets. And so the sacral chakra is influenced by the moon. And so we know the moon's energy also emphasis on the emotions. So we store our emotional energy in our wombs. And as far as women specifically, we have womb codes that connect us to ancestral knowledge. And it's the center of our power, okay? Specifically as women, it is the center of our spiritual and divine power. So a lot of people, and I've been doing Reiki. I've been a Reiki practitioner for, I think at this point, about 6 years. I'm actually a master Reiki healer. And one of the areas that I find a lot of people, and specifically women, need a lot of work but specifically 2 chakras oftentimes, the heart chakra and the sacral chakra. And it is because that we hold emotional energy there. And a lot of us are carrying a lot of ancestral, generational, and maybe even soul level trauma that is, got that chakra blocked and in need of healing. As well as the patriarchal system, as I will relate to it, purposely, blocked our wombs. Okay, we've had a lot of things from the food to the low elf waves to the suppression of the goddess and the taught that God was masculine, okay, and also that dogma, okay, that a lot of people go through and learn in church and in the mainstream religious systems, okay. Religion means to bind back. And so what people don't realize is the purpose of religion in the way that we understand it at this point in our evolution was intended to bind us back. And in suppressing the knowledge of the goddess, suppressing the knowledge of the divine feminine, and the level of indoctrination that we experience in churches, as well as a lot of things that was done structurally, okay? Because as above, so below. As within, so without. So what's going on within us affects exteriorly. And so because a lot of the temples, we have to understand that the symbols had temples all over the earth, okay? And these temples, the architectural structure of these temples were not like these phallic symbol architecture churches and cathedrals that were built often on top of a lot of sacred temples. They were round, circular structures, okay? Because that circular energy is a feminine energy, okay? And so in changing a lot of the architectural structures, placing these churches and cathedrals over these temples help to usurp the power, okay? Because energy comes down from the celestial bodies and then is anchored into the earth. So in order to change the earth's system from a matrilineal matriarchal system into a patriarchal system, a lot of work had to go into this, okay? They have placed certain seals in the oceans. They have laid masculine structured temples and phallic symbols on specific ley lines to redirect and subvert the energy so that the masculine system could stay in dominance. On top of the indoctrination, on top of the brainwashing, basically, that was done to us on a subconscious level, and the programming and conditioning that also is a part of the indoctrination that we experience and the dogma that we experience and we're coded with when you go into church and even within just our culture at this point, okay? So there's a lot of different levels of how the woman, the goddess, the divine feminine was suppressed and how they were able to maintain it, okay? So there's a lot of work that needs to be done on an internal level to break down these restrictions, to break these codes that were placed into our morphogenetic field, to release the programs and conditioning. And a major part of it is knowledge, okay? I know myself as a woman, I came to a point where the goddess started to reveal to me that God, or the original form of God, was a feminine construct, okay? Even my father, who grew up in Christianity, okay, accepts and knows that God is a woman. He started to say it, okay, after a while. He started to read, he calls it, he says he receives revelations, and he does, okay? I get my spiritual abilities from both my matrilineal and patriarchal side of my family, okay? My mother and father side of the family both have a lot of very strong spiritualists. You know, my father, my great grandmother, his grandmother was, you know, she was known to be a witch. You know, they were afraid of her. They say, don't bother that woman. She do that stuff, okay? And she did not play, okay? She even had a witch's name. Her name was Elvira. How special is that, okay? What up, great-grandmother Elvira passed down a lot of power and a lot of internal knowledge. I know as I started to ascend and wake up, even before I ever read my first book on magic and spirituality and the occult. Before I saw my first lecture, I was already setting up altars because I was doing this from the genetic memory bank. And the connection that we have to that genetic memory bank is through our womb, through our sacral chakra, okay? Some even call it the Magdalene codes, because Mary Magdalene also symbolically was a high priestess of the divine feminine. She was not a whore. She was not a prostitute, okay? She was a high priestess. And she carried these womb codes. I have a book that I got about Mary Magdalene, and it discussed the resurrection of these womb codes and different things that we can do, and how, within our period blood, we carry stem cells, okay? So there's a lot of knowledge that the goddess has brought to me. Some of these things, again, I just knew internally. It was like when I started to wake up and I would meditate and I would just go into like this spiritual space and I would just know what to do, okay? I just knew what to do. And so I would just do things because I started to spend a lot of time by myself. And I would just know what to do. And then Spirit would lead me to different books and to different teachers. One of those people early on that Spirit led me to was Iyanla Vanzant, who, interestingly enough, is a high priestess of Yemaya, okay? And Obatala, okay? She's been crowned both. So it was not a coincidence. And she kind of reading her books, it was the first time I ever heard the word Orisha, okay? Was reading one of her books. She discussed in there how she met this man who showed her a book and showed her who she was in the book. And she talked about initiating into Santeria and different things. And at the time, the internet wasn't what it is now. And the information on the internet wasn't as vast as it is now. But I remember rudimentarily going online, finding a website about the Orishas and just kind of printing out one page. And what I would do is, I didn't realize I was making books of shadows back then, but that's what I was doing. I would do research and, print things out and add it to my book and write things down and just collecting knowledge along the way, not really understanding that this is what spiritual people do, this is what witches do, but doing this just from genetic memory, okay, just from going inside myself and doing what I felt. And then I started to read books as I read Iyanla Vanzant, and I read Gary Zukav, Seed of the Soul, and just reading different books on spirituality and metaphysics. And like I said, it took a while before I ever read my first book on magic, okay, which obviously I have. You come into my house, you can tell that I love to read because I have maybe hundreds of books, okay? I love books, and I would read on anything, you know what I'm saying? But I have a lot of books on the occult and metaphysics and spirituality and astrology and, all of those things. But anyhow, so I've definitely, over the years, cultivated a lot of knowledge internally and externally, and also channeling things from spirit and from my ancestors, and things like that, and learning from different teachers and mentors that spirit has led me to get extra information and insight. So it's really, really important as women that we be educated about our power, about the true nature of God. There's a book called When God Was a Woman, and I actually have that book, and it talks about how before we have Jesus Christ, there was Sophia, okay? There's a book called Priestess Sophia, which I actually do have. And then the workshop, I'm going to give you books. I'm going to give you information from the books. I'm going to give you information from channeling, information that I have learned and been passed down throughout my family and bloodline, because, over the years, it's like the spirit has also helped me look into my own ancestry and bloodline and get certain amount of knowledge and things that, the elders remember. Like I said, my mother's grandmother, my great-grandmother on my mother's side, she also was known as a witch, and people would come to her and they would pay her and she'd do work for them, okay? And I always wondered, when I was younger, why we had certain knowledge. They would call it like hoodoo practices, like the things that a lot of black families do, where on the New Year's you cook greens and cornbread and make black-eyed peas. And, the first person through your house had to be a man because that brought good luck. And, there was just a lot of what people would call superstition, some people, that we have within our family. A lot of knowledge, like my grandmother would say, don't tell your dreams after the sun goes down because they'll come true. And we just had a lot of things like that, a lot of spiritual practices, which later I found out was a part of hoodoo and conjure, that came, and I really do believe, at least part on my mother's side, that information came down through my great-grandmother, who was, as I later found out, she was always a little different, you know what I'm saying, was considered to be a witch, okay, and within the community, that's how people looked at her. Now, she was very religious, okay, don't get me wrong, she went to church, okay, every Sunday, okay, she's definitely religious, but, I guess you could call her a Christian witch, okay, more or less, but that power and that information, and I feel like even in death, I feel like I'm closer to her, because I didn't grow up in the South where she lived and where she was from, although I did live there twice, once in my teenage years and for a little while as an adult, but I didn't grow up with her. But in death, she's a lot closer to me. She's even come up in some of my readings several times. I've had people stop me and be like, you got a grandmother on this side and she's with you and she's very proud of you. She's happy that you stayed on your path. I've had that several times happen to me, that where she's come up in readings and things like that. So, your ancestors are also there, and their knowledge, even though you may not be able to physically talk to them, or even if you don't have a medium that can share that information with you, you can tap into a lot of ancestral knowledge through activating your womb codes and clearing and healing your womb. So that's going to be a really big part of the workshops, on top of the lectures, giving you information about the different forms of the goddess. The goddess Isis is the goddess of 10,000 names, and they say that, all of these different goddesses are just aspects of the one goddess, okay? So a part of the lectures is going to be giving you that information that has been suppressed, things, again, that I've studied, books that I've read, things that have been passed down throughout my family, things that I've learned, because even on this path, you learn a lot from other people. And so Goddess has, connected me with different people over my long spiritual journey that have also added to the body of knowledge and information that I do have. And I know for a fact, and I've been saying this for years, that one of my main purposes here, as far as spiritually, is to help to resurrect the goddess, to help bring back the knowledge of the divine feminine and the goddess, and help her to be placed on her rightful throne, as well as helping to activate women. I used to say to women all the time back in the day when I first began on my spiritual journey, I kind of tap and, kind of like help wake them up a little bit, you know what I'm saying? And so being a Reiki master has been a gift to myself, to my bloodline, but also to be able to help women to heal. And I've been very successful with my Reiki practices, helping people to heal even physical ailments, you know what I mean? I've had some really good success stories over the years with people who've had different health issues, physical health issues, that obviously stem from energetic issues. And along with, the treatment and guidance of their doctors and doing Reiki healing and different healing rituals for them, they have really had some very great results. So I'm going to push back the apprenticeship until next year, because I'm going to spend the rest of this year helping to resurrect the goddess. And there's certain things that the goddess wants me to do outside of helping to heal women, because I also do grid work, okay? And so the goddess is already showing me different places that I have to visit to help to anchor in these light codes that are going to help shift the energy in the earth, thereby shifting the energy in women, because we are very influenced by the energy in our ley lines, and there's a lot of trauma held in these ley lines. We have certain ley lines that are called karmic ley lines, and obviously there's a lot of heavy karma in them. I've noticed that whenever the goddess sends me to a location to do grid work and to do ritual work, I notice I tend to bring a lot of justice. I tend to help to clear residual energy blockages, and the result of it tends to be that area experiences a lot of evolution. A lot of things change in that area. I've seen this several times as I went to do grid work in different areas, and then going back and looking at the events that happen after I leave. It really does have a big, profound effect. Okay. When I went to Alabama, I saw it. When I went to Hot Springs, Arkansas, I saw the evolution of what happened there. I didn't pay as close attention to what happened in Ohio after I visited Serpent Mound. I may need to go back and look and just kind of see what the news was, several months after I left there. So that's the only one that I didn't pay as close attention to. But yes, so I will be offering a 3-week workshop. It's going to start on September the 20th, which is on a Saturday, and it will be the 20th and then the 2 consecutive Saturdays after that. It will be a live Zoom thing. I highly recommend that you take advantage of this, because I will also be invoking spirit. So I'll be calling, not only teaching about the goddesses, but calling down their energy, okay? Invoking their spirit and their energy, doing an invocation, as well as doing a live Reiki healing session that will include sound therapy. So I have singing bowls, I have a Merkaba crystal pyramid, and I have tuning forks that I use in my Reiki sessions. And so sound healing is a very powerful tool for healing and for activation. And so this is going to be a great time for women to gather. I tried to make the workshop affordable, so a lot of you could participate. I hope that you do. I'm going to be uploading some things on social media about it, as well as adding it to my website today. So look out a little bit. Maybe I'll have time to do it before I go to work. But if not, I'll definitely do it when I get off. And I just want you guys to participate, because this is going to be great. And it's going to be healing for me too. One thing about being a Reiki healer, channeling that energy, it heals you and it unblocks your chakras and clears you, okay? But we're going to be focusing on the sacral during this time, okay? Specifically focusing on the sacral. And like I said, I'm going to also schedule some time to do some classes and some in-person Reiki at a shop that's here in Michigan. So I'll have that information for you soon. I've got to get with the shop owner and get some dates scheduled and everything. But that's something that the goddess is moving me to do. She wants me to push back my apprenticeship, which I think is important, very much so. But she wants me to push that back to do these workshops and classes. So the classes that I'm going to be doing are all going to be geared around goddess energy and divine feminine energy. Because we got to resurrect. We've got to bring that information back out. A lot of it has been suppressed, and it had became taboo at one time. The hanging and the witch trials and those massacres, that was purposely done, okay, as a part of traumatizing the divine feminine energy. And we have what's called the collective unconsciousness. So what it did was it put a stigma to where no woman wanted to touch her power, and nobody wanted to be called a witch, because witch used to mean wise woman. It was an honor, but they turned it into this negative thing, and it left a scar on us collectively as women, as well as it helped they physically tried to kill out the high priestesses and the women the midwives, and people that they call witches, the spiritualists, the match. That was basically the matrilineal, matriarchal system. They went to war on us, okay? And we rasped, okay? I remember a couple of years ago, a lot of these witches started to come to me I have a deck, a oracle deck that they had me get, and it has the knowledge of different witches. Some of these women were, you know, hung and burned and different things. I know just a lot of them started to come to me in spirit, probably because of my purpose in healing. And I did do some things for them. Some of them wanted justice. Some of them needed healing themselves, resurrection. Some of them wanted to be remembered. And so I did do some things ritualistically, spiritually, for some of these women that started to come to me. So, you know, it's a whole experience, you guys. All right. I want you to enjoy your Wednesday, and you have a blessed day.